like it was like a State of the Union. But have you ever seen in all the years you've watched these people, watched these moments, you ever see anyone enact the sergeant of arms? I never have. And then it got down to that young kid who, brain cancer survivor, loved being a cop and had a little cop suit and he was there. That was done. And they sent him a Secret Service badge. The head of the Secret Service comes down, gives the kid a badge, and they hug. Democrats sit on their hands. I'm going, quit. And then this other moment where this kid gets the green light. He's going to go to West Point. And they start singing "We Shall Overcome." That's not your song, dude. I'm sorry. For those of us who watched the civil rights movement take place where people gave their lives, there was the theme that Martin Luther King brought forward, right? And they started singing "We Shall Overcome," and I'm watching this at home and I'm just cracking up. I'm going, so what is the immediate future of the Democratic Party? I just think it's like laughable. So the last but not least, coming up at noon, I was taken a year ago to go see the Sandhill cranes in Kearney, Nebraska. And I I've read about it, heard about it, thought about it. And so I went for the first time. I'm leaving Monday morning. We're going back. There's something, they come in on the Platte River on the edge of Nebraska's sandhills on the American Great Plains. And the sandhills are frequently the edge of the bodies of water in the central Platte Valley in Nebraska. And so, but they've been doing this. And it depends on who you read, how long they've been doing this. And these guys are the closest things apparently to dinosaurs. Maybe crocodiles are, I don't know. But they have these big, long wingspans, and I was blown away by it. It was just the most amazing thing. And I've been offered a chance to go back and see the Sandhills again. And believe me, I mean, I was moved by it. And so I go, okay, so we're going to have now, and I've already gotten a bunch of text messages, on the minnows coming on the show. Dave and Scott Menough for years had Bird Talk, Wild Birds Unlimited. Here's one. I wish you could have the minnows on once a month in the summer, spring, fall. I miss that show. I do too. And maybe we can do that, see what they want to do. This one. Peter, I really miss Scott and Dave Menough and the Bird Talk show. They were so fun to listen to. They were. They're brilliant and they're funny and they're good friends and I love them. So they're going to come on and talk about Sandhills at noon. Having said that, there's where we are. It is open lines 303-696-1971 with one line open. Let's go to Ron in Colorado Springs. You waited. Ron, good morning and thank you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Pete. The gentleman that was talking about drones triggering memory or something that happened about a week and a half ago, and I bring it up only to see if any other listeners, when I hang up, have had a similar experience. I went out to eat lunch with my wife. We ordered, and I'm looking through my pictures to show her one, and when I opened up the gallery, it's an Android, a whole bunch of thumbnails showed up on my phone that were not mine.
Wow.
There was quite a few, and I hit one, and then it enlarges. There was pictures of AR-15, some guns, some landscaping, and it kind of blew my mind. And I said, I think these are my son-in-law pictures, and he has an Apple phone. And I showed her, and she's, yeah, that's his truck and everything like that. Well, the food came. I put the phone away. When I was done eating, I brought it back up to look more. They were gone. Everything was gone. My pictures were there, but his weren't. And I called him later that day. He works in a top secret, he don't even tell me what he does. Mm-hmm. And I asked him if he had any knowledge how that could happen. He was as surprised and shocked as I was when I told him the pictures I saw. Well, not shocked, not those kind of pictures, but how did they get on his phone? And I did some cursory research, and I cannot find. We don't share Facebook. He's not on social media. I don't know how it happened, but it's my belief it may be tied to the very thing that guy was talking about with the drones, where they can single out phones.
Well, there's a 101 question, if I may just throw it at you. I personally believe that the government is so intrusive in your life, whether you like it or not, and can do things electronically or using electronics to destroy your life, to do anything that they want to do if they want to do it. Do you believe that?
I do now.
Yeah, good. Good. That is 19.
I would have thought somebody said that before this experience. It was conspiratorial, but
no.
I could see how they could easily put anybody's pictures or events and just destroy them with that technology.
Even in the long term, listening and thinking about the presidency. When I'm I kind of semi remember Harry Truman, but the first real president that I could get a grasp on was Eisenhower. Eisenhower was probably the only Republican that my dad and his brothers spoke highly of. And I'm sure it's certainly the Second World War. I, as a little kid, thought that Dwight Eisenhower was like my semi-grandfather keeping the commies off me in Washington, D.C. I mean, and my respect for presidents has just, straight down. And my respect for the government has gone with it. My love for my country has increased, but my hatred and fear of what is able and capable to be done has intensified 1,000 times. I don't know if you share that or not.
I do, and I'm also afraid that what Trump is doing, and I voted for him, I like him, he's done a lot of good things. I'm afraid the speed and, for lack of a better term, carelessness may come back and blow up on us.
Well, and Musk, who is, I tell everybody, read that lengthy book on Musk and get an insight to who this guy is. But he is also precisely the same guy that you and I are talking about. He's over-the-top brilliant. He has no regard for this. This is from the book. He has no regard for anybody else in the world but himself. And he's given a free hand at this point to go ahead. I don't know if it's good or bad because it hasn't gone on long enough for me to judge. But to and this is very Trumpian, to take this guy, give him he'll take all the hits. Everybody will hate him, and he can be the straw dog for Trump. I don't know, but I like what you say. Yeah.
So many things they promised now, they haven't been there long, but the removal of illegals, they've got a few thousand. We've got 12, 20 million.
Yep.
I don't hear anything that's making any progress on that front. They did seal the border, but I don't see a bunch of them leaving. And then we've got the Epstein files.
Yep.
Yeah, they're dribbling out a little at a time.
Yeah,
Nobody's charged.
No, we're told Kennedy. We were told Kennedy. We were told Dr. King. We were told you're right about Jeffrey E. All of these guys. But here. No, where are they?
Well, we got those 21 security officials that signed off to destroy Trump. There's enough time. How come they're not being charged for the false information that they put out?
We'll see what happens. But that's what I'm saying. Remember, it's early on. Presidential historians that I respect, talk about the first 100 days. Trump has been, is it 47 days today? I'm not sure. I can't remember. But it's in and around that number, 46 or 48. So the 100 days is the mark. And there's so much turmoil. And that speech the other night, and again using the term street theater just to measure and weigh the impact. Forget about what's said or not said. But when those Democrats, I mean, it's childlike, holding up paddles. And have you ever seen, I don't know how old you are, watching State of the Union speeches or things like that, you ever see anybody enact the Sergeant of Arms? Because I haven't.
No. No, never.
Think about that.
And to think those representatives are supposed to be the best, the best that we can come up with. They are the true deplorables.
What was Nancy Pelosi? She looked like she was chewing her cud. I mean, what's she doing there?
Yeah, I mean, you know how old men get that way.
She's the only person in the room older than me. But I thought, why did you bring in Nancy Pelosi? Is it because she ripped up the speech a bunch of years ago? I mean, but they kept focusing on her, and then they didn't show the people getting up and walking out, and then when they start singing "We Shall Overcome,"
they couldn't have done any worse. But he was great. I liked how he delivered, and he was very calm compared to the old Trump. Trump 2.0 is
right. Like when he called out Pocahontas. Hey, Pocahontas.
Oh.
he's like the guy standing on the street corner when I'm a kid, that jerked everybody around, like. I don't know, but the real, and I wrote this down. What is the immediate future of the Democratic Party? Wrote it on my worksheet last night. What do you think? They better work. I don't know.
Somebody will come, Newsom or somebody, and they'll rejuvenate. When he pled to them, why don't you join us?
Yeah, and
finding some joy here, and. That was a very heartfelt statement. I could tell when he was looking at them, but it got nowhere.
It was amazing. You take care. Very good call, Ron. Well thought out. Thanks, brother. Thank you. All right, let's go to Tyler in Morrison. Hey, brother. Tyler, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are we doing today?
Sir, I like that sir stuff.
Buddy, have you seen the series Peaky Blinders?
No, but I've been told my brother loves it. It's about the Irish gangsters.
You've got to watch this.
Yeah, I've been told.
It's been out for 8 or 9 years, I've always heard the same things to watch it, and it is fascinating. I'm taken with it right now to see this on a human movement on the screen, cool. And it's post World War One. Yeah. In Ireland, England, with all the IRA issues.
My brother he raves about it. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I tell you what, man, it is eye-opening. It is heavy. I suggest everybody take a look at the intricacies.
What's the main sense? The main sense you come away with when you say that?
That nothing has changed. That you've got you've got case in point examples of how governments were literally built. With criminal activity, with having blackmail on somebody, with setting somebody up, with drugs, with murder, with shipping, with contracts. All of this stuff is still in our face.
Oh, the stuff in Ireland.
It's not only. It's not only in our face, but now you've got technology involved in this.
Well,
and that right there is terrifying.
The great line that came was Nietzsche's line. He said, the government always lies. I'm back part-time reading Nietzsche. And he said, everything that the government has, they took it from somebody else.
Right.
And he said, and everything they say is a lie.
And they're no different than the guys on the corners running a scheme. They're just at a better level,
I mean, and as a little reader, history geek reader, I love it now when conservative on-airs talk about the treacherous FBI. Go back into the 60s, go back into the 40s. Under FDR, when FDR under J. Edgar Hoover, working for FDR, and then working for everybody, they were always that. The 60s and 70s radicals said exactly the same things about Hoover, and the next guy was L. Patrick Gray and the FBI.
Different package.
Just well, different target.
Yeah.
But so
yeah, and like literally watch. You're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about when you get into the thick of this thing. How people will move in between circles. They will appear as something in a government position when they have a side motive.
Sure.
You have the socialists, nationalists.
Sure.
You have the fascists.
Sure.
All these little movements, and it's all subtle. It's phenomenal, and everybody needs to take a look at that and understand that you have key players, big organizations, corporations, and these things are still with us.
Absolutely.
And it's now just when you have this kind of technology that we're carrying around, these surveillance bricks in our pocket, they've got us on a level that you can't comprehend.
You and I are pawns in the game, as Bob Dylan said.
Yeah.
Take care. Yeah. Great call. Thanks, Tyler. Be
Have
safe.
fun, man.
All right, everybody, we got a turnaround coming, and we'll come back. We have one line open. The Minnows will be with us at noon. This is the Spring Forward Day, and what is the future of the Democratic Party? Right now, it's bleak. It's not my father's Democrats. 50 will be the high today, 65 Sunday, 70 on Monday. We close?
30 seconds.
30 seconds, no cigar. I don't want to start another one, but this moment, and I watched it at the speech, and again, just street theater, which is really impactful, what street theater is. And it happened on, I guess it was Wednesday or Thursday here on 710 with America's Mom and Billy and Jeff. That was street theater. So, happened before, it'll happen again. Hold on your hats. Now we turn. We have jam lines. I'm Peter Boyles. This is Radio Free Denver, good old 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. The United States and Ukraine are set to hold peace talks in Saudi Arabia next week. The Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky will separately have a meeting with the Arab Kingdom's Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. Ross Cullen reports.
After President Zelensky meets the Saudi Crown Prince on Monday, his team, but crucially not Mr. Zelensky himself, will stay on in the country for meetings with the US delegation. Washington has made no secret of its dissatisfaction with the Ukrainian leader, and the president's chief of staff is likely to head up the Ukrainian delegation. President Trump's Middle East envoy Stephen Witkoff says that the idea for the talks on Tuesday is to, quote, get down a framework for a peace agreement and an initial ceasefire. President Zelensky, speaking on Thursday, says that Ukraine is not only ready to take the necessary steps for peace, but, he said, we are also proposing those steps. In Kyiv, Ross Cullen, Salem News Channel.
A big show coming up for you tomorrow on This Week on Capitol Hill. David Mencer, spokesman for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, will talk to Tony Perkins about crushing Hamas terrorists once and for all, saying, we are facing pure evil. We will put it down and we will be successful. Plus, fourth-term Congressman Brian Mast out of Florida offers an in-depth analysis of President Donald Trump.
Here we go. 710 KNUS. Saturday morning, I'm Peter Boyles. They call me the Streak. There's a great line in this song. This is Leonard Skinner. I ain't hiding from no one, and no one's hiding from me. Boy, that's a nice way to live. This is a biker song. I'm playing drums. But having seen this band, I don't know how many times. I never saw them before the plane crash, but I've always seen the, here he goes. Weather, no change in me. But he says, I ain't hiding from no one, no one's hiding from me. Crank that up, Adam, just for a second. It's over. Never mind. Cut's gone. 710 KNUS, Denver's talk station. Spring ahead Saturday. 50 today, 65 Sunday, Monday, 70 degrees. We're getting so many calls on cranes, and so many things are being said about cranes. The minnows are on with us at noon. Get it out, Peter. Let's go here. This is Lynn on line 3. Hey, Lynn, good morning. Thank you for coming on the show.
Hi, Peter. This is Bo's wife.
Hi, honey. Hi.
Hi. I'm calling about the cranes because there is a wonderful show that's on TV right now called The Americas. And it's Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks narrates it. Uh-huh. It is wonderful. The first one was on the East Coast, and then it did Mexico, and then the next one was on the Wild Wild West. And in that, they had a whole part on those cranes.
Wow!
And it was amazing, Peter. You can probably go back and on demand and pick those up.
I'll find it.
It goes through their mating dance, and it's the photography in that is unbelievable. So I just wanted to recommend that to people to watch that. And yeah.
Have you?
Okay, well that was all.
Well, hang on a second. Have you ever seen them?
No, I haven't seen them.
It's a must. I mean, they're spiritual. It's a must.
Well, when you see it on this show, you'll realize that.
Yeah. It's. And they people are unsure. I mean, the historians, naturalists, and others are even unsure how long, because as has been pointed out, dinosaurs simply flew away. That's and in these and I wonder, one of the things I'm going to ask the minnows is, what is more closely related to what dinosaurs once were, crocodiles or cranes? I'm serious about that.
Well, I point that out, actually. I think they referred to that, yeah.
What did they say?
It's amazing.
Who?
I can't recall specifically, but there was some dinosaur connection.
Oh, the bow. There's no question. They're dinosaurs. Or they...
Yeah.
But they've been doing this. There's different guesstimates on how many million years or thousands of years these cranes have done this. And when you don't see them, and then you see them. And it's like, whew. And so I think the cranes that are there now that I'm going to see came from Guatemala, I think, and they're going to Siberia. But they just, they're people who are serious in wetsuits and get down. I've obviously not done that, but just to see them. And they're like, as soon as you see one, you see 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000.
Yeah. It was stunning.
The best to the man. The best to the man.
Will do.
Thanks,
Will do, Peter.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
All right,
bye.
In Wyoming, this is Jack. Saturday morning, Jack, you're on the show.
Yeah, your earlier conversations about the laws being enforced and all that, I think what we're going to be watching for is, can Pam Bondi be compromised in the job she has? And if she can resist it, I think she's going to be the first female president if she's able to resist being compromised.
It's sitting on her shoulders right now, and
is it
the promises of the releases that we haven't seen, and but we've been through that before. I mean, I'll tell you everything we know about UFOs. Well, we don't know anything about them. I'm good. No, come on, or the Kennedy assassination, which is, and Jeffrey and the Dr. King stuff, and are they meaning, is she going to be part of releasing all the docs?
All we can do is watch.
Best guess.
All right, man. Well, we don't have the Dulles brothers anymore, so there's not as many mysteries. But we do have. Go ahead.
No, but the Dulles brothers did Deep Six a bunch of stuff, and as did Edgar Hoover dies. Nixon's president. Edgar Hoover dies, and Edgar Hoover's replacement is L. Patrick Gray. Patrick Gray comes out and faces the press like 24 hours or 36 hours later and says, "You all need to know there are no secret files." And guys are looking at each other. And we all know that Hoover kept secret files. That's how he kept his job. And what he
they had a big thing over Hoover's head because he's a cross-dresser. I mean,
no, beyond that, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, the mob did. Frank Costello did, and no, they fixed horse races for him. They all admitted it. Yeah. That he would send an agent to the window. He and was it Clyde Tolson? Who was his lover? I should say supposedly.
I don't know the name.
I think it was Clyde. I think it was. But
I didn't know if he was monogamous or was he like our governor.
Very much so. Very much so. Very much so. And he couldn't afford to go outside. But the organized crime guys had him, and that's what kept him until some people say Appalachia. Till Appalachia happened, and nobody could. He would not admit that there was such a thing as organized crime in America. And everybody said, because they had him. Frank Costello, Lucky Luciano, they knew, Joe Bananas, they knew who he was. And they had allegedly had pictures.
Sure.
And that was
that's what the whole Epstein thing was set up to do. The same thing.
Absolutely.
That's exactly what it is.
And
we'll see what comes out on that.
Well, in fact, the story that I was involved in, Players and Sugar.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, they knew.
And you were the only one that pointed that out. I remember you beating on that drum every morning when I was driving to work.
I still believe in a greater sense, like I paid with my job on that. But it's no big deal, but if you say that to anybody now, Players and Sugar, what? Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Come on. They didn't. Those powerful guys didn't give a rat's patoot about Michael Hancock becoming the new mayor. He was just some guy that used to be on the city council and became mayor. That was
just a puppet man.
It was about them. That's right.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother. All right, man.
All right, man.
Safe. All right, 303-696-1971. Who's next? Is it we're going to Lakewood or Inglewood? Line 1. Okay, go to line 1. All right, we go to Ron in Inglewood. You're on the show, man, Saturday. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Mr. Peter. Hey. How you doing?
Good.
I got several comments. One is, out of all this mess, now we know. Now we know how they do it. And I always used to say, I don't ever remember voting in an election for illegals to come across the border.
Me neither.
And I don't ever remember being told that all these congressmen and senators have a slush fund that they pull out of.
Do you remember being told that we're lying to you about Iraq and Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Do you remember them saying we're lying to you about Southeast Asia?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And it took me 6 years to get out of college to stay out of Vietnam.
Point of it is, they're lying to you.
Absolutely. On Columbine, what a sad situation that the 4 or 5 people in that school colluded to lie about this girl, which makes me think when the principal changed and all that came over, all of these woke individuals, the ones that have got funding from Soros, and now we know USA, they came into that school because those kids were vulnerable. And they started working on them.
I think it's something that's Joseph Heller, who wrote Catch-22, his second book, and I've used the title of his book thousands of times, Something Happened. And it's kind of what I bounced off of Caplis. I don't think you can name these individuals, but something happened.
Well, how about this? You know that one of those counselors or the speech therapist are in constant communication with this gal wherever she is.
Let me say this.
And she's watching the New York Times. She's listening to the radio show, and she knows there may be a grand jury.
They're streaming now. I know more about this story than I'm comfortable with talking about on the air because of some of my friendships. But the apology that came nearly a year after the ex-teacher allegedly ran off to Oregon with her student the moment the girl turned 18. And no criminal charges, even though state officials found, and they used these words, that she had groomed the teen for years. She was 15. I'll read this to you. She was 15. She was in Kearney's class, and the girl's mom asks, and this is with Danny, that neither she nor her daughter be named, but since the teen entered Kearney's class as a sophomore in 2018, the two exchanged 24,000 text messages, hours on the phone, met in secret. And according to the note, and that was the one that Danny talked about, that the parents find under the bed about kissing. That's...
When my son was in elementary school, he was given one of the teachers trouble. He was 8 years old, and he was just a kid, right? So we have a meeting with the principal and other teachers, and then a psychiatrist.
Why?
And he wanted my son on Ritalin.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted. He wanted my son on Ritalin. In the same school, prior to that, when my daughter was in her last years, we had to get rid of the principal because he was stalking the new, young, first-year teachers straight out of college.
Wow.
He was a handsome guy, and he would stalk these young gals. And all we could get to him, the only way we got to him is the school finally gave up because we kept having meetings. They transferred him to another school.
Oh, sure.
But
remember,
that's why those counselors over there are already looking to get into another school because they know they're done.
Back it up. But if you look at organizations that have harbored child molesters, the Catholic Church, the Boy Scouts, you get on a list of these. What do they do? If they would catch a priest, they'd move him to another parish.
Yeah.
They wouldn't. And one of the things that Denver's former Archbishop, Charles Chaput, who became a great friend, Chaput came to town and he ran a whole different boogie because he was not an intolerant man to me, which meant everything. But we found these stories where these scoutmasters, they'd be in Salt Lake and then they'd be in Grand Junction and then they were doing it because the scouts couldn't handle the truth. And it just, the same thing with the Catholic Church.
Well, I'll tell you, it's the number 5-star school district in Colorado. It's Cherry Creek School District. I won't mention the schools my kids went to, but we were constantly butting our heads against the wall because of the games that were going on. Hey, now, on a fun note, I say let the guys play volleyball. But however tall they are with their hand in the air, measure that, and they have to and draw a line. If it's 6'8", draw a line from the back line, and they can't pass 6'8" on the court.
They shouldn't be.
And let them play basketball, but make them shoot outside the 3-point ring, and don't let them.
No.
And I'm saying this facetiously.
I know you are.
But because it just breaks my heart.
But there's a UFC fighter, an MMA fighter,
Oh, he almost
Fox,
killed that.
almost killed three women. Fox
Yeah.
Fox Fannin. He fights under another name. I think Fannon's part of it.
Yeah.
And
One other thing,
Yeah.
there are cranes that land in Alamosa.
I've been hearing.
And also in Steamboat Springs.
But
and in Steamboat Springs.
Yeah, but not like. But let me end up.
No, I guess I've seen those. I used to travel in Nebraska.
Yeah.
They'd fly over my car as I was going from one place to the other.
They knock your lights out. They just are.
Here's a favor I'd like to ask.
Real quick.
When you get back, would you say, if you were in a motel or whatever, would you say this is how you did it? Because I want to do it.
I did it last year. I was taken, stayed in a motel, got up early, go and see the cranes. They fly earlier in the morning. They come home at night, and
it's incredible. You're an incredible person.
Ah, you're kind. I got to jump. Music's playing. One line's open. 710 KNUS.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. The CIA is laying off some recently hired officers as President Donald Trump's efforts to downsize and reshape the federal government take hold. The CIA said that it is reviewing personnel hired within the past 2 years and that officers whose behavior or suitability make them a poor fit for the agency will be let go. The agency won't say how many staffers are expected to be fired in total, but the cuts are part of a sweeping job reduction at agencies across the federal government. While intelligence agencies have been spared the deepest cuts, they haven't been immune. Some agencies, like the USAID, have been largely dismantled. In February, the CIA offered buyouts to some employees. Trump's recently confirmed CIA Director John Ratcliffe has promised to overhaul the agency and return its focus to human-gathered intelligence.
We want them to keep the good people, and so we're going to be watching them, and Elon and the group are going to be watching them, and if they can cut, it's better, and if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
President Donald Trump says he is suspending the security clearances of attorneys at a law firm involved in launching since-discredited opposition research during the 2016 presidential campaign, accusing Trump of colluding with Russia. The sanction against Perkins Coie, who worked on behalf of Hillary Clinton, is the latest in a series of moves by Trump and his administration, weeding out corruption and weaponization in D.C., including Justice Department prosecutors, career intelligence officials, and most recently, private practice attorneys. Taken together, the actions appear to send a message that the weaponization of government will not be tolerated and to also deter government officials from engaging in unethical, possibly illegal activities, then pulling in private sector workers to help them. The man whose legal saga amassed a worldwide following of serial podcast listeners will remain free even though his murder conviction still stands. A Baltimore judge ruled for Adnan Syed's sentence to be set to time served under a relatively new state law that provides a pathway to release for people convicted of crimes committed when they were minors. Both prosecutors and defense attorneys agree that Syed does not pose a risk to public safety. He maintains his innocence. Syed was released after more than 23 years in prison 3 years ago when his conviction was temporarily vacated. Elon Musk is telling Republican lawmakers that he's not to blame for the firings of thousands of federal workers as he follows President Donald Trump's directive to help with downsizing the government. He's saying in private meetings this week that those decisions are left to federal agencies. Musk is one of President Donald Trump's top advisors when it comes to eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government. His message came as Republicans publicly support his work at the Department of Government Efficiency. Trump weighed in after a cabinet meeting, saying he's instructed the department secretaries to work with DOJ, but to be very precise about which workers will stay or go. In Dallas, Christina Owayo, Salem News Channel.
Great music. Good picks. Adam Walker. Here you go. Boom, 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 boom. This is a crane viewing song. It is. Last time you drove across Nebraska. Hit the words here. Saturday morning. Here we go. Fire on the Mountain. Marshall Tucker Band. We did a show with them, man. They were great. The only country music with a band with a flute. They played Denver, and I thought there would be a real Marshall Tucker. You know, because usually, the band, that fronts a name. No. This guy said they had a practice hall in Dallas, Texas, and the key to get in the room that they kept their instruments in said Marshall Tucker. It was a key company, and so they became the Marshall Tucker Band. There is no Marshall Tucker, but boy, they had some hits. I'm a big fan. 710 KNUS Saturday morning, the 8th of March, 2025, 710 KNUS. And again, it's spring forward. 50 will be the high. Coming up, it seems to be the running off-air topic and on-air topic, the Sandhill Cranes. And we will have the Minnows on. The return of Dave and Scott Menough. One more thing, and then I need to talk about somebody, and then we'll move to the callers. But this idea of sanctuary, Denver, of course it's sanctuary, proclaimed by Wellington Webb. Wellington Webb proclaimed Denver a sanctuary city. And I did a billboard campaign. I'm doing a morning show on KHOW. And we did fundraising. We put 2 billboards up. And they said, relax, you made it. Sanctuary city. I took more heat for that one. But that was Wellington Webb. And he never really cared for me anyhow. But it was Wellington Webb. And he proclaimed it sanctuary city. When Hickenlooper was the gov, he made the state sanctuary. I was there for it. I watched it. We talked about it on the show. So don't pretend that this is not a sanctuary city. That mayor is, there are words, but I'm watching this joker. He couldn't answer a question. He was like dodging and ducking, but we are a sanctuary city, Denver, Colorado, proclaimed by Wellington Webb. I still have a picture of the billboard. All right, David Ellis, and then we'll go to the phones. You've heard me and I saw David early this week, about taking your valuables to David Ellis Jewelers to get a fortune in cash and to secure an appraisal from David for all the valuables you have tucked away in your home. Now, weddings are coming up and graduations, and start looking for gifts, and it's true. But I'll tell you what. There's lots of other reasons to go see David in case you don't have a Rolex watch, rare coins, or a silver tea set. See the man. See David Ellis for all the most meaningful gift-giving occasions. David Ellis Jewelers, just the right items for just the right prices on special people that mean the most. He's my guy. An antique watch, an emerald pendant, a gold necklace, a diamond ring. This trusted jeweler has been buying precious metals and antiques in Colorado for decades. Dazzling cases filled with hundreds of new and used pieces your loved ones will treasure. See the man 6 days a week, and he's there. David Ellis, Cherry Creek. Look for the black awning on the corner of 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek. 6 days a week. Explore DavidEllisJewelers.com. Call my friend David Ellis, 303. Weddings are coming up, too. There's summer weddings. 303 spring weddings. 303-322-8779. 303-322-8779. Again, right on that corner, 3rd and Clayton and Cherry Creek, black awning. You'll see the signs. Tell David Peter Boyles sent you. All right, where do we begin here? You're Don. We begin at Don? All right. Don in Lakewood. Hey, man. Don, good morning. Thank you for doing the show. Hi.
Hey, good morning, Pete.
Man.
A couple quick things, and I'll get to the topic. One, get into Peaky Blinders. When I first started watching that, I used to think about you because it was like right up your alley.
Yeah, I will. I promise.
The guy that is the star of that, I can't think of his name. He played Oppenheimer in one of the latest versions the past couple of years. So he's a hell of an actor. Really dynamic guy. So you read Sinatra Club?
Yeah, absolutely.
So remember when Sal was talking about J. Edgar and why he wouldn't admit the mob was alive because of how embedded he was with them?
But that story has been told in so many different books. But yes, I did read Sinatra Club, and remember who's also in that is the guy that played Luca Brasi in Godfather, Lenny Montana. Lenny Montana.
Yeah, he breaks down all those people were who they were in real life, and the difference they were, and even bodies and shapes. It's like, De Niro playing this tough guy, the guys he portrays, especially when he played what's his face from
Jimmy
Goodfellas.
Yeah, Jimmy Burke.
Jimmy Burke was he was a bad guy.
Bad man. But he was the only one. And let me, if I could, they call him. His real name was Jimmy Conway, and he and his family the other families, like Henry Hill, where he could say yes to his own name, and Tony and Nicky, his family said okay, but Jimmy Conway's family said no, you can't use his name, and so they changed his name to Burke in that film, but he was Jimmy Conway.
So my point being, when they talk about releasing everything about Kennedy, Martin Luther, Epstein,
all of it,
I said this before, this stuff is so deep and so widespread and involved so many of the different agencies, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get what you think you want. They'll come up with some dummed up story, and I don't think Trump realized, he may be now, just how much of this crap for so long has just been buried.
Oh, yeah. I mean, really the time periods to look at, one that begins right at the end of the Second World War, but one that really begins with the American government's involvement when Prohibition, the Volstead Act, gets passed, which is the rise of organized crime, which, then all the bribing begins. But Hoover's not a good guy, and neither was Bobby Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy wasn't a good guy. Yeah, but people don't want to.
Well, neither was his brother, if you get down to it.
Well, Jack was
Jack was in all that, and couldn't he continue trying to kill Castro? That kept going on and on past the Bay of Pigs.
But that was
Jack
Bobby.
was a hell of a womanizer.
Oh,
well, Jack knew about it.
Oh, sure he did. Of course he did. Who really knew about it was Joseph P., the ambassador. He knew, and that's where, that moment where he's had a stroke and he can't talk, and they can't go near him. You mentioned the Sinatra Club. Sinatra carried Joe Kennedy's water, and when they were thinking, when Tony Arcardo and the rest of those people, and the Hoffel Wars, they were thinking about who they were going to kill, and they were going to kill Sinatra because they thought Sinatra was part of the double cross. And now it's interesting. I mean, the point you make is they knew. They all knew.
My point is the depth of what all this has involved by how many people, that regardless of who's in power, and who's looking at Pam Bondi, Cash, and they're never going to be able to release all that.
No.
Because first of all, I doubt if they'll spend the time just reading, like you and me, and reading all these different people, and you're going, well, yeah, the dots are all connected now.
Sure, of course they are. I can see, but the people that could see it were turned against so badly in the 60s, who said, Hoover, and these people are corrupt, and the conservative right said, oh, no, Hoover's wonderful, and the left said, no, he's wrong. Now, what I love is my really ultra-conservative allies have come to the dance about what the CIA was doing and what the FBI was doing. I had to hit the wall. Good call. Thank you. We come back. 710 KNUS on a Saturday morning. Spring ahead. Spring Ahead Saturday. It's daylight savings time coming your way. Saturday morning, 8 March 2025. I'm Peter Boyles. Good to have you all here. Thank you very much. In the opening, as always, who are those people? It's Ric Flair and Bret Hart. I'm a huge professional wrestling fan, particularly of that era, and not so much now, but back then, and those voices of those guys, that's who we stole from, was Ric Flair and Bret Hart. So it is going to be 50 for a high today and 65 on Sunday, and Monday, 70 degrees. We began the show in a somewhat interesting manner in how radio works, but Dan Kaplis, Afternoon Drive, and K-Hal comes over, and he's our guest. Now, I've already worked with Danny in the studio, worked with Martino. When Leon White passed away, we had Dave Logan came over and worked with us. And, we've been this kind of, Mandy Connell came and did the YouTube show. And so there's been a lot of what once wasn't was. And so it was great to have Danny on the show. But it's the mother of this Colorado teen who was allegedly seduced, I keep using those right words, but by her teacher, who says, now they're saying woke school policies. This is the mom appearing on Kaplis' show, allowing school officials to ignore red flags and help the teacher to groom this young girl for years. And so the investigations by the cops, and the teacher's name now is public, Leanne Kearney. She's 37. And the claim is she engaged in systematic grooming to alienate the girl from her parents and use school administrators to help. And the claim is the principal and others at Columbine High School and Jeffco were all too happy for Kearney to have control of the girl under the guise of helping her navigate her sexuality and get her proclaimed as a homeless teen. And I mean, it's just a sad story, a really sad story. So in light of that school in April 20th of 1999 being the stalwart and teachers losing their lives defending their students, and the janitors, and the actions of Principal DeAngelis, to bravery beyond, and now we have this. So, and it begs a question that I wrote down. I make a worksheet throughout the week to bring in on Saturdays. The future of the Democratic Party, which is, Danny pointed out, is tied to the teachers union, but it's more than that. And watching that reaction of the Democrats, we can, street theater stuff, I mentioned that, but how the Democrats react to Trump. You don't want to applaud Donald Trump, that's vague. But when it gets to these moments, we talked about this, that little kid he was there with his dad, and he had a police uni on, and he's survived brain cancer, and he's just a neat little kid. And they have the Secret Service guy come down, give him a badge, and the Democrats don't do anything. They sit there. This kid's going to get into West Point, and they sit there. And I have never, and maybe you have, but I haven't, I've never seen in a moment like that to have to enact the sergeant of arms. And so I wrote this question down: what is the imminent future of the Democratic Party? The two great losses in November were the Democrats and what's called heritage media. So, having said that, next hour, and for the second year in a row, I'm going to go see the Sandhills. And Sandhill Cranes, we're going to Kearney, Nebraska, and the large crane in North America. And they're going to Siberia, actually extreme northeastern Siberia. And from my reading, because we're getting the experts on, these cranes are coming out of Guatemala. These are Spanish speakers, but they're going to Siberia. And there is something, and I can't tell you what it is, but I just only witnessed it once, something very spiritual about seeing them. And they come in flocks of about 10,000, and they land in Kearney. And so returning to where they belong, Scott and Dave Menough. If you guys were old-time Denver radio listeners, up until recently, there was Bird Talk. They had Wild Birds Unlimited, and I love these guys. They're just great guys, and you got to get full value. So Scott and Dave will be with me at the 12 o'clock hour. They're the best to talk about the cranes. There's where we are. Okay, so let us begin. Where do we have one line open.
Michael.
All right, 303-696-1971. One line is open. This is Michael. You're on the show. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Peter. Nice to be with you. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
Okay, awesome. No, I was going to ask real quick, with that Bird Talk show, what station was that on? Because I don't remember.
It was here.
It was on Can US.
Yeah, but actually it floated. It was one of those shows that was like Mike Boyles' restaurant show, or they were just so good, weekend guys, that they were here. I'm going to ask them how many stations they were on, but they've been on like 4 maybe, I'm guessing, and they're gifted. I mean, if you haven't heard them, they're two of my favorite people away from radio. They're just good guys.
Yeah, I'm going to definitely listen to their interview. I'm looking forward to that. And, you were talking about different personalities. Before I get to what I was going to talk to, did you get a chance to know Rick Barber very well?
Real well.
He did overnight
sure,
at KOA?
real well, yeah. Ricky and we went back years.
Yeah, he was, I listened to some of his archives recently, and wow, he was just so, and it's interesting to see what's happened to overnight radio, how it's all kind of gone from being local to syndicated, but obviously, the old 850 signal went all across the USA, but
get it in your teeth
at night.
I'm a great believer, big deal for whatever that's worth, that if you had a local all-night live show right now in Denver, you'd eat their lunch. I mean, there's most of this stuff. Most of this stuff is just all syndicated. Doesn't have a damn thing to do with Colorado or Denver. It doesn't. I mean, all talk, with one or two exceptions. Limbaugh certainly being the man, but believe me when I tell you, syndicated radio, with the exception, even like sports shows, they have attempted to do syndicated sports. Well, most of those guys talk about New York or they talk about L.A. They don't talk about the Broncos or the Rockies or the Nuggets or the Avalanche or CU, DU. They don't. And so you got to get the Sandy Cloughs and Dave Logans and Joe Williamses and those guys. And Woody Page announced his retirement. And you got to get those guys because Tip O'Neill once said, all politics is local. And I say that about talk radio. The one exception was Limbaugh. And having said that, if you did an all-night local live show, say from midnight till 5 in the morning or whatever, you would clean clocks. The people would be drawn to your show. But the way that the corporate structure of radio today is put together, they are not trying to win friends and influence people. They're trying to make more money or as much money as they can, and I think it's to the detriment of what was once a great art form.
Yeah.
Shut up, Peter.
No, I love hearing you talk about radio. It's funny when you talk about like sports radio. I was 1430 The Bet in Colorado. It replaced the old I forget what it was before, but they used to do all live and local programming on there, and then a couple years ago they flipped it to this sports betting format.
Sure.
And I was listening to a show on there the other day, and this guy, he like screams every 20 seconds, and he thinks he's like getting people's attention, but I don't think that's like, good radio.
Well, no,
when you're just trying to be over the top all the time.
I've tried to explain this many times. This is a craft. It's an art form. It's a number of different things, but it's been politicized to its demise, and it's turned into what it's turned into, and now seemingly each and every time period or quarter, there's another story of another radio station that's dropped its format, and it's all about money. I mean, the people that run the biggest one, if not the biggest conglomerate, they fired so many people, and the principals in the corporation are building mansions literally on Long Island and other places, and private jets, and at the same time, where you used to have, and oftentimes it was a single mom doing what's called the logs. They're doing the logs, putting the logs together and everything. Now they say, well, we'll take one woman who have to do 5 or 6 radio stations at once. There is no, if any, PR people. There aren't any promotions people. I mean, it's just all gone. And they have taken this down to such a level. Then they go, well, radio's been diminished. Well, of course it has. Can't you? If you don't feed the plant, it's not going to grow. So anyhow, it's at a crossroads right now, and what's happened in the world of taking it off air, taking it away, podcasting, it's killing these guys.
And you see what Odyssey just did this week. They just fired like almost 900 people.
Yes.
And, you look at the shows that are getting affected. It's not, the big, like the Mark Levins. It's the local morning shows. It's the local personalities. So they're suffering. The syndicated stuff is doing great,
Well, actually, it's not doing great. It's really diminished, but it's cheap. In other words, if I'm on 100 stations and you're paying me, you're getting a big check. I mean, I don't know what Limbaugh was making. He deserved every bit of it, but he was probably making a couple mil a year at his heights, maybe more. I don't know. Would you check on that, Adam, what Limbaugh made at the height of his career? But, and he had jets.
He was on a $500 million contract for 20 years with Premier Networks.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, when you think about that, 500, obviously, he was getting 10 million listeners a day. But, I was going to ask, has that ever been something you desired to be syndicated?
I always thought, Lee Larson, who is probably the finest mind in radio I've ever been around and worked for, and Lee and Alan worked for Lee, and Lee and Alan were friends, good friends. And we've often talked about when syndication hit, what would have happened to Berg? Would Berg have gone syndicated? Not me, but Berg, and because of his uniqueness and how he was and would, and then in the meantime, and most of the stuff that's written about the guy isn't even beginning to be true, but he was in the process. He was changing. He was changing his view of the world too, and so he had gone to Israel and come back, and there was a marked change in him when he returned from Israel, which was fairly close to the time that he was killed in June. So, I don't know. I was trying to explain to another friend about this business, the talk radio is an art form. And here, let me just read this to you. Just hand it to me. 2018, Limbaugh second behind Howard Stern. I didn't know that. Highest paid radio host, reportedly earning, buckle your seatbelts, $84.5 million. January 5, 2020, Limbaugh renewed his contract again. You just pointed that out. Media reports that it was a long-term renewal, no length specified. According to Donald Trump, it was a 4-year deal. You get a four-year deal in this business, you're really getting something. But what once was. And we were, all of us, those people that you mentioned, talk was a new format. Although, if you go back in Denver and KLZ radio, I'm trying to think, I know that some of the earlier guys, they did talk, but it would be, they held the phone up to their ear. They used to tell me about it, and they'd say, so Michael says, something, but there wasn't any of this, playback and going on delay and getting a flamethrower like Berg, or none of that stuff existed. But when it began, it saved AM radio. AM radio was gone, and it saved it. And then along comes Limbaugh, who really, 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 everybody that sits behind one of these microphones owes Limbaugh. They do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and after that, I don't know. There were, Stern. I'm not a Stern fan by any stretch. I don't like him as a person. I don't like his on-air stuff. But hey, the guy cooked it, made tremendous money, and he's up on a satellite. You can't argue with success. But
it's kind of interesting when you think of like AM radio today. Half of the stations are dedicated to God, and half of the stations are dedicated to talking about current events, the news, Trump, and it's like. Is there room for another format to emerge on AM radio, other than Christianity and God and current events?
But that's what I'm saying. It's what's happened now is it's gone to the pod, and guys like Joe Rogan and Rogan, I think, and others have really put it together. Rogan has a great responsibility for getting Trump elected. I mean, he did and all the young guys. My son listens to Rogan, and Rogan used to live in Boulder. And come in and do our AM show at KHAL. Rogan came in, and he was first. When I first met him, he was a stand-up guy, but then he did UFC, and I love UFC, and we would go to the fights, and Rogan would be there. So that's where I met him. Now he's Godzilla. He's taken Limbaugh's place.
And I think radio missed a huge opportunity when Rush died. There was talks for someone like Tucker Carlson to replace Rush, but
with respect, there was only one Rush.
Oh yeah, nobody could replace him. But I think it's like radio gave up on a lot of things like podcasting, for example. Radio is running advertisements for podcasts when at their origination, when they started getting popular, because radio thought, well, these podcasts are never going to take off. They're not going to be popular. Let's promote them. We'll get paid to promote them. But they didn't realize how huge podcasting would be.
Remember that there is a passing of technology and of. We got 2 minutes to do this.
Okay.
There was a time when it was just newspapers. That was the only way. And then, the first commercial station actually goes on in Pittsburgh, KDKA. KLZ was the first one here. And they used to, the idea was broadcasting so you could sell radios. They didn't even think about commercial time. And then this happens. Then comes burgeoning television. And the networks begin. And they take away all the big radio stars, Jack Benny and Bob Hope and crowd, they all take television shows. And then television gets knocked out of the box or network TV gets knocked out of the box by cable. And now cable gets knocked out of the box by streaming, and they get it out of the hands of the government, but it's systematic. Look at how much power do you think newspapers have today? They have none.
I don't know. I mean, do you even read the Denver Post, like the hard copy anymore?
No. I mean, there's places, things like Westward. They did a piece on a certain person here in town that was very good, and everybody would say, "Leave it alone." Okay, fine. But they're still edgy guys. But podcasters and what's happened, they've just pushed it aside, and like you said, it's down to whatever it's going to be. But it ain't what it once was. But then again, who is? Thanks, Michael.
Exactly.
Thank you, man.
Thank
Be
you,
safe.
Peter.
All right, you're welcome, man. Shut up, Peter. Come back. Let's open lines, and then the minnows are with us at noon. Stay here. Charlie Daniels. Listen to this. Here it goes. Pow, pow. This is called The South is Gonna Do It Again. He sings about all the bands. I'll tell you a story about this tune and him. Take me right on time and the money. See it? The South's gonna do it again. Talking about Leonard. Dickie Betts. Be loud. Here it So 1,000 years ago, as a young boy disc jockey with my mentor, the main man, Bob Lee, we had a morning show on KLEK, and we went, the KLEK I think was like 23rd in the market, and Bob and I took it to, I think, to number 2 behind Hal and Charlie, or number 3 behind Hal and Charlie and KOA. And I was in over my head. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know what, not that I know now. So Charlie Daniels did this show called the Volunteer Jam. And because, Tennessee, the Volunteers. And so he brought the show to Red Rocks, and we were asked to MC it. And he just had everybody with him. He had Rufus Thomas with him. And so they bring him over to KLEK. They bring Charlie over, and we do a radio show with him. And at the I didn't know any of this. At the time, how long ago was this? 1,000 years ago. The Klan. If you can come to that moment when he says the South's going to do it again, if you can find that, Adam. So the Klan's using this. They were, they had buying time. They had ads, and they would backdrop the South's going to do it again. Total. And Charlie, of course, the first hit that he did Uneasy Rider, and then he did stuff that The Devil Went Down to Georgia, and those things. But he did this whole other part of talking about Southern rock music, and he was absolutely right. I mean, those bands hung together. There wasn't like acts breaking up. They stayed. Willie Nelson's band, I think, still is the same band. I think Paul English might be gone, but the rest of those guys. And so he came in the studio, and he was real big then. And the last time I saw him at Fiddler's Green. We emceed him, and he had lost a lot of weight, and he was just he was a good old boy. But that song, the South Gonna Do It Again, and the Klan grabbed it. And he was really upset. So that's and I was around Charlie Daniels like 3 times. Once in Cheyenne during Frontier Days. Charlie played there, and I was doing the K. Howard Night Show up there, and he came over and did it. And with the old man, he did it with us. And then I saw him not far before we lost him, but he could play. Whew. He'd burn through the strings on the bow and just tear the town down. And so that was my first experience with a big net. And there's another story that goes with it. We will not do that on the air. This morning, and I'll give you the headline from the paper: Perv teacher groomed my daughter in class and stole her away. Woke school officials helped her, mother says. Well, that was Dan Kaplis' story that he broke. And he crossed over and came on the show with us this morning. He is a good friend. And Danny suggests, as an attorney, you choose a lawyer who shares your values, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says so much about you and everybody involved in the case. And Dan Kaplis is the son of a cop. We've been over so many things that Danny did in his life, and golf scholarships, but he's just this really decent man, and he's a pretty damn good country lawyer. Believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar jury verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Kaplis Law, the official firm of the Denver Nuggets and Colorado Avalanche, and he came on with us this morning. And the Kaplis Law Firm, serious firm for serious cases. Danny accepts righteous injury cases on percentage fee basis. He can represent good people from all walks of life without any regard and ability to pay. If you need Dan's help, 303-770-5551. Hit caplislaw.com. Danny spells it C-A-P-L-I-S, but 303-770-5551, Danny Kaplis' law firm. All right, so coming up at high noon, the Minnows will be with us. Where do we go? Which call?
John in Lakewood.
John in Lakewood? All right, very cool. Lines are jammed. John in Lakewood. John, thank you for waiting, man. You waited a while. I apologize. You're on the air.
How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm probably kind of riding a good horse to death, but on this immigration, I get so tired. You're the only person that I've heard address it through the years.
Well, that's
what are we going to do about the people that hired them?
Well, no.
And not only hired them, but recruited them.
Well, remember this, and
aren't they a little bit responsible?
Of course. I mean, Tom Tancredo, they hated Tancredo. And one of the principal mover and shakers and money suppliers to stop this was the National Chamber of Commerce. The National Chamber of Commerce was principally a Republican front. And they did everything they could in their power to stop any of this, because these were the corporate boys that wanted the low labor cost, the disposable workers. But it was a Republican outfit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well,
I from my reading and listening, I don't think, if anybody, I don't know how many people are coming across now. I think very few, if any. So Trump has really fulfilled that part of it, but your point's well taken. I don't know what they're going to do.
Tom Holman, I heard him say one time, I think he's right, harboring a illegal is against the law. If you got a packing house and you hire 500 people, and you got a pretty good idea if they're illegal.
Sure, and
shouldn't those people be maybe facing a little bit of jail time?
Well, they're famous, infamous. The Somalis in packing houses. No, of course, and again, when American workers got outsourced. When you bring, if I'm working for $10 an hour, you bring somebody in that'll work without any affiliations and work for $3 an hour. That's what the National Chamber was doing.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Well, I didn't know that exactly, but I mean, Well, the principal, yes, but it's I think pretty serious when a business hires someone that would hurt American citizens.
Well,
you know what I mean? There's got to be a limit to something.
Go back, and everyone talks about the farm workers and talks about that moment in the 60s where none of us ate grapes and none of us ate lettuce and everything like that. Well, the farm workers, Cesar Chavez carried and I met his brother, and his brother, got jacked for getting in fights with illegals, but they said he carried a pocket full of dimes. There was no cell phones.
Yeah.
And he would see illegals in the fields, and he would go and drop dimes and call, before it was called, I think it was called INS before it was called ICE. And he would make the call, and he would Cesar Chavez, and it makes me nuts because when you see the marching for illegals, they always carry, it's a black field, and it's got a red eagle on it, and it was Cesar Chavez's flag, and they carry it. Cesar Chavez did everything he could to stop illegals coming in the country. Cesar Chavez, because he knew they were scabs. If they could get there into the fields and be hired, they would break. They would break the union, just like the steel mills or the coal mines. And so Chavez, and one of the things that, and I'm a huge Ronald Reagan fan, but Ronald Reagan, again, funded by, there was two big growers in California. One was called Bud Antel, and the other was called Iceberg. And they funded Reagan, and Reagan did everything he could to break Cesar Chavez's union.
Yeah.
And they used to have a thing called the Bracero program where you could cross over and go back. But that's the Democratic Party. Once again, here we are. What's the immediate future of the Democratic Party? It's not this. But and the history of illegals or legal immigration in this country is a very storied history. I'm the grandson of at least two of them, but they were legal when they came. They're mixed. They came on the legal stroke.
Well, I think there's a difference back then than what's going on today.
Absolutely.
The immigrants a long time ago did have a hard life, but they had the dream. These people today really don't have a dream. They're coming over here for low-paying jobs, and they'll stay low-paying.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure of that. I think there are people that really, if you think about it, would come here for, but who do you knock out of the box? And it's very complex. But again, I've told this story and I've written about it. When I was a little kid, is when, and I told the story before. They were called the DPs, the letter D, and the other, and I thought it was like DEEPEE. I didn't know who they were, and they were displaced persons, and they had come out of the camps in Europe. They came to Pittsburgh. They had either relatives and they were they were tough kids. I grew up off of Negley Avenue in Pittsburgh. People would maybe remember, but I remember those guys coming, and the school was there. School was called Liberty School, and that's where I went to kindergarten and first grade. And there were still, guys knocking each other on their ass, but the local toughs thought they were going to handle these guys. Well, these guys been in a war. Get ready, get ready. But so it's always been there. There's been immigrant families who grew up with them. I don't have an answer, man. But you can't let people just come in unabated. You can't.
Yeah, and they bring up the Native Americans. I don't know if it's true. It seemed to me like I learned there was an Indian chief who knew the people were coming, and when they came, they got along. That's what we have Thanksgiving for.
Well, if
but look what happened to them.
That's right. If anybody deserves reparations, it's Indians.
Well, I agree. But they tried to be nice. Let them in, and help them out. And we'll have Thanksgiving, and then look how they got treated.
Yeah, but by the time it gets to sell that to Sitting Bull or Crazy Horse or Rain in the Face, they ain't going to buy it, you know. You take care of yourself, man. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. All right, we go here. This is James in Denver. James, thanks, man. You're on the show. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Peter. I caught what you were talking about the school teacher at Columbine. I haven't really heard anything about it till today. Is this is a female teacher?
Yes.
And the student is female?
Yes.
Where's the mom is the one making waves, I'm assuming.
Now I'm unsure of how the story gets off the ground. I heard, and I got a call from a friend of mine, a text from a friend of mine to turn on capless. And that's the first time I heard the story. And she was the mom of the girl, and she went on Danny's show, didn't use any names, and alleges they now named the teacher Leanne Kearney, and now they live in Oregon. I know everybody's names, and I'm not comfortable doing that on the air. But the principal. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, so my question is, and I mean, I'm 61 years old, and I grew up in a time, and I'm assuming you did, that if your kid
you bet.
in school that was happening to your kid, the father would show up and handle business. And that's what's wrong with America. People are afraid and weak.
Well, that's the point of this question about what's the immediate future. Because, again, I don't know where you grew up, how you grew up, but no, I saw dads. My brother, I told the kids, I saw grown men fight. For real. I mean,
yeah, and it was just an unwritten rule. You mess with my kid, you're handling business. That's it. That's gone.
We played baseball at this place called Davidson Field, and the coal mine, Newfield Mine, was over the third base. And there was across the street, there was a giant eagle. Remember, I don't know if you grew up in the East, they had Kroger's and giant eagles. I saw guys go behind the giant eagle and punch it out. It's for real. We would.
At this hour, I'm Christina Owayo in Dallas, and here are your top stories. A federal judge has ruled that President Donald Trump is not allowed to fire a member of a labor agency, and the judge ordered that she be allowed to remain on the job. National Labor Relations Board member Gwen Wilcox sued Trump after he fired her and the agency's general counsel. U.S. District Judge Beryl Howell in Washington, D.C. found that Trump did not have the authority to remove Wilcox. Government attorneys argued that NLRB members should be, quote, removable at will to ensure democratic accountability. Wilcox disagreed. The CIA is laying off some recently hired officers as President Donald Trump's efforts to downsize and reshape the federal government take hold. The CIA said that it is reviewing personnel hired within the past 2 years and that officers whose behavior or suitability make them a poor fit for the agency will be let go. The agency won't say how many staffers are expected to be fired in total, but the cuts are part of a sweeping job reduction at agencies across the federal government. While intelligence agencies have been spared the deepest cuts, they haven't been immune. Some agencies, like the USAID, have been largely dismantled. In February, the CIA offered buyouts to some employees. Trump's recently confirmed CIA Director John Ratcliffe has promised to overhaul the agency and return its focus to human-gathered intelligence. In a rare bipartisan move, 2 senators have introduced legislation in the latest attempt to fight the flow of fentanyl and its precursors into the U.S. from China, Mexico, and through other borders. It's one reason that President Donald Trump has given for his new tariffs. Trump says those countries have failed to stem the trafficking of fentanyl into the U.S. The governments in those nations all say they have cooperated on the matter. The new bill doesn't link tariffs to the fentanyl issue, but it seeks expanded authorities to sanction Chinese entities that help finance foreign opioid trafficking. The sponsors are Republican Senator Jim Risch and Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen. The man whose legal saga amassed a worldwide following of serial podcast listeners will remain free even though his murder conviction still stands. A Baltimore judge ruled for Adnan Syed's sentence to be set to time served under a relatively new state law that provides a pathway to release for people convicted of crimes committed when they were minors. Both prosecutors and defense attorneys agree that Syed does not pose a risk to public safety. He maintains his innocence. Syed was released after more than 23 years in prison 3 years ago when his conviction was temporarily vacated. The president of a small federal agency that supports investment in African countries sued to block the Trump administration from shutting it down. Ward Brem, the president and CEO of the U.S. African Development Foundation, said in the lawsuit that DOGE and President Donald Trump do not have the authority to shut down the agency, which was created by Congress. That's what you need to know at this hour. In Dallas, Christina Weil, Salem News Channel.
Here it comes. Be loud. And the Klan was lifting that from Charlie Daniels. Bang. Here you go. 710 KNUS. And our robot masters took over and knocked the collar off, ran a newscast. What do you know? Saturday morning, the 8th of March, is spring forward Saturday, 2025, 710 KNUS, 50 will be the high. And we have one open line, 303-696-1971, coming up the Minnows. Dave and Scott Menough, who I'll ask them how many radio stations, how many years they did Wild Birds Unlimited, but I'm going Monday to see the Cranes. I was taken once before. They are really spiritual. I mean, it's like this whole thing to see. And so I became a little geek reader, wanted to read about cranes. And cranes have, if not the oldest, one of the oldest fossil histories of any existent bird. 10 million year old crane fossils, listen to this, from Nebraska. They find them, and this may be from the prehistoric relative or ancestor of the Sandhills. And the oldest unequivocal Sandhill crane fossil, battened on the hatches, 2.5 million years. Older by half than the earliest remains of most living species of birds. The boys are coming up. All right, let's go to Mark. Mark, you're on a radio show. It's Saturday morning. Good morning.
Pete.
Yo.
How's it going?
Back and forth.
I think I have a knee that's 10 million years old. I could be wrong. I could be off.
I could be wrong.
My carbon dating. My dad was one of the original guys on carbon dating. That's a whole other story before I was born. But
no, it's
like I think in the 50s.
Can I ask you if you've ever seen the cranes? You ever go see the cranes?
I haven't, but I would love to.
So we're sitting here, Adam and I are talking. Maybe next year, if we're all still here, get a bus. Get a big Greyhound.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, and then book a big deal. I tell you, there's a prime rib restaurant in Kearney. You'll knock your eyes out. But
there's any beef in Nebraska.
Well said. Good. No, well said. But I'm going there, and I look forward to this restaurant. That's great, and the food is great, and the people were great. And the Sandhill.
We operate there. My company operate in Nebraska.
Oh, it's a different country. It's a different world.
Pete, let me tell you a show before we get into I want to do a report card on Trump real quick. We'll check the boxes quick, but you need to see a show if you haven't, called The Bear.
My daughter told me about it. Yeah.
Listen, Pete, you grew up dysfunctional. I don't know. One of the two of us grew up the most dysfunctional, but nevertheless. You watch that show, and Pete, it's loud and the language is vulgar, but it's like, God, I forgot how I really grew up.
How it was.
Yeah. So, because you talk about your uncles and all that stuff, and it's like, oh my God, Pete would go crazy. And the lady, oh God, I'm spacing her name right now. She used to be a real fitness nut. Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh yeah.
She won an Emmy for playing this mother.
I love her.
Drunk, cooking on Christmas.
Sure.
And Pete, I'm not kidding you.
It's what it is.
You have to watch it early enough to be able to go to bed. That's how real it is.
My brother and I always say, putting the fun in dysfunction, and then we go. Yeah. Then the story goes from there. But there's this recent family story, I won't do it on the air, that's popped up. And it involves me. I said, I don't remember that. Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, yeah, Pete.
Yeah, sure. So,
Pete, what'd they say? If you remember the 60s, you weren't there?
Okay,
so.
Yeah, and?
Yeah, Ukraine, Pete. Let's do that real quick.
All right.
The mineral deal. It's kind of a hook and ladder thing because we'll get the benefit of a lot of those minerals in 18 years, and it won't be $500 billion. So it's really to get a peace deal. Gaza will be rebuilt in 17 years. Now, Trump's not going to live to see this stuff, but everybody, he blew up people in the Middle East because they talked about America doing it. And, he also said, and I voted for Trump 3 times, and I'm a supporter. But you got to give a report card, the real report card. He said that he would have both wars solved and the prisoners back before he got in office. That hasn't happened. L.A. fires, we haven't heard a word, right?
Yeah.
Other than he's trying to get a deal with Gavin Newsom. Good luck. I've been working in California for 28 years, getting a deal with Gavin Newsom. Good luck with that. Now, to say the good stuff here is $400 million they just yanked back from Columbia. Did you know that?
I did see that. Excuse me. I took a swig of water. Yeah.
Because Pete, imagine it. We were at DU about the same time, some of the same professors. Imagine if that stuff would have been going on, and and they're going after Jews. I mean, I think personally, I might have got pulled into that.
Well,
in terms of lighting somebody up.
But yeah, that whole thing is, if you want to be against Zionism, and that's one thing, but this stuff in Columbia. But the interesting thing, I was explaining this to somebody, when there's something called the Frankfurt School that was in Germany in the 30s, during a guy called earlier about the rise of the Nazis. The Frankfurt School was far left, Marxist, workers, socialists, Trotskyists, and they were all in the Frankfurt School. So along comes the Führer and the boys. The Frankfurt School instructors flee. Where do they go? They go to Columbia. And hence, as Patsy Ramsey wrote, the Frankfurt School has always been the far left in America. And if you go back even into the protests of the 60s, they really actually Berkeley was the first place for free speech, but it's the Frankfurt School, the remnants of the Frankfurt School, the children of the Frankfurt School. And now here we are again. So I'm watching Fox News this morning, and they're showing they're not anti-Zionist. They're anti-Semites. And
well, but it's a safety thing.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine being at UCLA?
Well, right
you
now.
saw the melee out at UCLA.
Sure.
Well, no, before though.
Yes.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Why
indeed.
do people think this should be able to go on?
Because again, there are people that get the pass on the left. What was I watching? This guy that was executed by a firing squad, and I'm watching the news last night. I haven't seen the news.
Sloviak.
Yeah, but the guy, the way that the media covered it, it was all about this guy, this poor fill in the blank, and he was going to get shot. And very, very little about.
The guy they just shot. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And he beat his girlfriend's parents to death with a club.
Pete, I've done prison ministry for 30 years. There's people in prison you don't know. You have no idea what evil looks like.
Well, the point of it is they spent this whole time on the evil firing squad, and so I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm thinking, all right, now why are they killing the guy? Why are they shooting him? Why are they executing him? And then there's a little blurb that he had beaten up. Hell, he murdered his girlfriend's parents with a club, and they showed a picture of him when he did it. And the same thing was the only execution I was ever around was Gary Davis. When Gary Davis, he killed Jenny. Well, Kaplis and I were there, and he killed a woman named Jenny.
Killed that talk show host
sister. That's
sister.
Right. From the KOA, and they would do the Creddies were their names.
The Garden Show.
Yeah, the Gardens, the Creddies. Yeah, and I'm going to feel sorry for Gary Davis. You bastard! They should have killed you 25 years ago.
They should have.
Oh, absolutely.
Hey, okay. 2 other quick things.
Real quick.
He's got to get a way to cut interest rates because that's what's killing people, and he's got to get houses built in North Carolina.
Thanks for your time, man. We're going to do this. We come back with the Minnows, Dave and Scott, Sandhill Cranes. The world is your oyster. Hang on. Good afternoon, everyone. On a Saturday, it is Spring Forward Day, March 8th, 2025. Good old 710 KNUS, the voice of the people. 50 will be the high, 65 on Sunday, and on Monday, 70 degrees. I want to do this without further ado. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kids of all ages, if there ever was a legendary radio show, it's this one. Please welcome back Dave and Scott Menough, and they did Bird Talk, Wild Birds Unlimited. Boys, we haven't spoken in a year. You know that? The last time I had you guys on was the first time I was going to go see the Cranes. Good morning and thank you. Welcome back.
Good morning, Peter.
Yeah, it's been too long, Pete.
It's way been too long. First of all, somebody called and said about the show itself, the old show. How many different radio stations and how many years were you guys on?
Oh, my goodness. I think we were on, we figure about 32 years. Yeah, all this, you know, KLZ, KHOW, KNUS twice. We came back and spent most of our time there. There were a couple other stations that I don't remember the call letters of.
Yeah, KBEW, KBE, what was it? KZ, something like that. Anyway, you know, what happened was they figured out, KEZW, yeah, they figured out within a very short period of time what we were all about and then told us to move on.
I always go about myself. I always go, I've been on more radio stations than Conelrad. You guys, it seemed to be we always work together. Like sometime, I'd get canned or something happened. I'd get a new gig, and then you guys would show up. Man,
yeah,
I think it's called stalking.
Good to hear from you, students. Yeah.
I got to tell everybody, I love these two men. They've been so great and such great friends, and they had a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful show. I got a bunch of text messages this morning and this afternoon, I guess, about how people miss you and miss the show. So you need to know that. And
that's high praise from the best in the business.
You're kind, but nevertheless. So here's my new idea, and actually, it's an Adam Walker, Peter Boyles conglomerate idea. We have all these people calling up about seeing the cranes, and I'm being taken by a woman that really, they know this stuff. They went and saw it as kids, and I didn't talk to you after I came back, and I wish I would have. I'm looking. I didn't know I was going to go again, and then I started reading a lot about cranes, and Patrice showed me a bunch of stuff more about cranes. But then I realized cranes in the Orient, like crane-style kung fu and crane tattooing, and cranes have this huge impact. So I'll read this one thing, and I wish I'd have called you when I came back because it affected me. Seeing those cranes affected me. And this is a fun fact that I read, and I'll bring it here. Sandhill cranes have one of the longest fossil histories of any extant, meaning still here.
Right.
Yeah.
A 10 million year old crane fossil from Nebraska. And this is the reading, may be from a prehistoric relative or ancestor of the Sandhill, not belonging in the oldest unequivocal Sandhill crane fossil, 2.5 million years old. And by
amazing.
Yeah, and for that long of a time, these guys have been doing this.
Oh yeah. It's they've been doing this longer than we have.
Shoo. And to me, there's a spiritual thing. Patrice takes me to see them, and we're riding in the car, and I don't first see them. And then you realize the entire field is them. And all of a sudden, like the ground will move a little bit, and the crane will pop up. And you think, how long have these dudes been doing this?
Oh yeah. And of course, Nebraska, that's the perfect spot to go see them because, there's about especially concentrated along 5 mile of the Platte River.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's more cranes that show up there than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and so this was our idea, and this is why I'm going to pull you guys in. So Adam and I were talking, we could get buses. Listen to this. We could get Greyhounds, right? And there's the finest prime rib restaurant in the universe is in Kearney, Nebraska. Pam and Patrice took me there. It's like, this is a killer. But we could make a deal with some of the hotels or motels. And just ticket sales, and we could have you guys be like the team leaders. I'd just go along for the ride, and so would Adam, but have you guys do lectures and talk to people while the buses are moving and stand there with a handheld mic and talk about cranes because you guys really do know this. Well, you want in?
I'm in.
You in? Okay, good. There's one.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah.
All right, Adam. We got to get it up off the ground. But so begin at the beginning. First of all, talk about you guys and how you got into the business and what this is all about.
Oh gosh, I was practicing dentistry, and David was an elementary school teacher, And we decided that, I first decided I didn't want to be filling teeth the rest of my life. And I had been, into bird watching and bird feeding, and realized that birds didn't have teeth. So I thought this might be a great business to get into. So 1989, I opened the first Wild Birds Unlimited in the U.S. that was west of Kansas City. They didn't think we fed birds out in the west because we didn't have cardinals here. But we showed them, and within a couple of years, David and his wife, Kathy, decided they wanted to open a store, and we started doing radio just about as, 1991 or so.
Yeah.
And hopped around different stations. We worked with the Creddies. You mentioned the Creddies earlier for a while, and then different stations, KNUS, went away, some other station, came back to KNUS, and I think we were there the last 15 years.
I think most people that are talking to us this morning remember you guys, but I mentioned what happened with the Creddies. It was their sister-in-law was Ginny May.
Right.
And she was murdered by Gary Davis. And,
Jerry's sister.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And that's a whole. They were there, and Kaplis. Kaplis was with us this morning, but we were all down at CSP for the first execution in over 30 years in Colorado, and.
Didn't it take them about 8 years or 10 years to finally get that done?
Longer than that. I for what this is worth, because the attention that's been given this, they executed this guy by firing squad. We took our team down there and we did our radio show, our morning show, in the territorial penitentiary that most people call Canyon City, and the execution was done in CSP, the high security penitentiary. And we went over and I saw the execution room, and I was listening to Jeff and Billy the other morning talking about choosing a way to die, which is, but it looks like an operating room. And when we went in, Carol McKinley was with us, but Gary Davis was in a private cell down the hall. I never saw him. And they kept lights on him and a guard on him, but the people that I spoke to, not to ever use their names, but they all said they executed the wrong guy. I mean, when they caught him, not in the wrong guy in terms of the wrong guy, but he just got eating carbs in prison and getting old, and so by the time they get this big old gray-looking, overweight. Is that the guy that really did kill Ginny? Probably. I mean, it's the same guy, but it had to be 15 years longer than that. Well, they waited. And all the stalls and everything. And so, did you see the picture of the guy that they executed and what he looked like when he did the crime? He looked like a different guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, it's like, but they executed him that night in CSP, and it certainly didn't trouble me, and I don't think it. But there were people down there protesting it. And I thought, do you know what this guy did? I mean, do you have any idea what he did to human beings? He deserves to.
Oh, he was inhuman.
Oh, he's a horrible person. So anyway, I didn't want to pull away from that, but it was interesting. We're talking about how the media was spending time talking about the terribleness of execution. I said, this guy beat 2 elderly people to death with a club. I mean, cranes would not tolerate this.
No, they wouldn't. No, they wouldn't.
They have a pecking order.
Well, talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, Scott was mentioning that the cranes go through that specific part of Nebraska, and over 80% of the 500,000 birds go through there. And I was just looking at the live cam this morning, and they were, as soon as the sun was coming up, they were starting their vocalizations, and it's just so impressive. And unfortunately, unlike you, I haven't seen it in person yet, but I'll be on that bus. I would love to see it in person. Just seeing it on the live cam is breathtaking.
I tell you what. So I'm in a car with Pam and Patrice, and I don't see them. And those women had been there to see it. I didn't see them. The reason why is they're brown right now. And they're all in the fields. And all of a sudden, one will pop up and they kind of do this dance that's, they do this, and I think it's a mating dance, but they do this dance. And then you realize the whole field is them. Field after field after field after field. And
yeah, it's amazing.
I mean,
occasionally you'll see if you're lucky, once in a while you'll see a whooping crane in there as well.
Yes,
and they're quite different. They Audubon once tried to do an experiment where they tried to have the whooping cranes with the sandhills in order to see if they couldn't build populations of the whooping cranes, but unfortunately the whoopers imprinted on the sandhills, and so they didn't want to breed with their own kind. They wanted to breed with the sandhills, and the sandhills said, no, we're not having any of that.
Right.
It's more that they were not viable, but yeah, that's kind of neat to see one of those guys in there with all of those hundreds of thousands of sandhills.
So for just joining us, these are wonderful men, Scott and Dave Menough, that had the Wild Birds Unlimited and did Bird Talk, and we're talking about I'm going Monday morning to go see the Sandhill Cranes for the second time. And I was asked this to ask you guys, who is more connected to dinosaurs, crocodiles and alligators, or these cranes, or the relatives of these cranes?
Well, I was going to say Scott.
Yeah,
no.
You beat me to it.
Yeah,
it'd have, since it'd have to be crocodiles and alligators, since it's reptiles to reptiles. But the Archaeopteryx, the fossil was found that was 150 million years old.
Yes,
and for a long time they thought that was the oldest link between dinosaurs and birds, but they actually found an older one that's about 160 million years old. And this is, if you'll bear with me, this was the Xiaotingia Zhenji that was found in China.
I dated her in high school. I dated her.
Did you?
Yes.
Who didn't?
That's right, yeah.
Did you find her in China?
No, but we migrated. But
yeah,
I'm sorry.
Is that a euphemism?
What color were their feathers?
Well, these guys are brown right now, but they're going to turn color.
Wait, the juveniles are brownish and they become grayer, but also they can turn back to kind of a rusty brown color.
That's right.
Because they preen their feathers with mud and vegetation that's stained with iron oxide, so they'll get kind of a rusty color again.
And they have red on the tops of their heads. And
yep.
And let me come back full cycle. Or full circle rather. So from my reading, and that's all it is reading, you guys, I shouldn't even have the conversation with you guys here, but 1.8 million years ago is they think they see the first sandhill, or because the protos, the unequivocal sandhill crane fossil was 2.5 million. I know I get confused because I can't do this very well, but these guys have been around a long time.
They have been, yeah. And for those who don't know, this bird is about, he's about 3 to 4 feet tall.
Yep.
So he's a tall crane. He's got about a 6 to 7 foot wingspan.
Yep.
They weigh about 8 to 12 pounds, which doesn't seem like much for a 4-foot bird, but they're pretty much hollow. Their bones are hollow, so not a lot of mass to them, and that's why they can stay aloft on thermals and occasionally have to flap. I mean, they're just perfect for soaring. They fly at about 40 miles per hour, roughly. they migrate 170 to 450 miles per day at 38 miles per hour. They mate at about 3 to 4 years old, and they always lay 2 eggs.
And they stay together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During breeding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and they'll mate for life.
Yes. How do they know?
And mating for life kind of means, they all look alike, don't
That's
they?
Right.
They mating for life means that as long as the mate is alive, they'll stay together.
Right.
Now, if a mate dies, then they can pick a new mate.
It's like everything else, right?
Yeah.
The Sandhills, I mean, the more I read about them, but then I've expanded my reading because, as a fan of martial arts, and I never put this together. Crane-style kung fu, and there's an area where the Korean peninsula goes into what's today modern China or Manchuria, and there are cranes that live there. And all, if you ever watch or look at Japanese tattoos, there's so well done with cranes in them, and the Chinese kung fu. And I realized these cranes have had enormous impact. I didn't put it together. In Asian culture, they show up because they fly into Europe out of Africa, and I saw them actually. I was in Lebanon and saw them flying north.
Oh my!
Oh, I saw them. I said they were the ones, and the stories of the stork bringing the babies, and this guy explains it. He said because it happens in the spring, and in medieval Europe, that's when the babies were born in cycle, and all kind of stuff is intriguing. I'm being told to take a break. Can you stay for a break? Come through this. All right, put the guys on hold.
You bet.
All right, so it looks like we're going to take a crane tour next year. That would be great. And I say that now. Somewhere as a management guy, just pounding his fist on the table. Shut up, Boyles. Saturday, now we're in spring forward. Good afternoon, everybody. 710 KNUS. The minnows are with us, and the sand cranes. Hang on. There you go. Brownsville Station. Looking in the boys' room. My hand's up. I did that. It's Saturday, March the 18th, March the 8th, 2025. Good afternoon. It is Spring Forward Saturday, 710 KNUS. I'm Peter Boyles with wonderful guests. 50 will be the high, 65 on Sunday, Monday, 70 degrees. If you're just joining us, I should say it that way, welcome back to 710 KNUS. They, for years, were here with their Wild Birds Unlimited and the Bird Talk show. Scott and Dave Menough, and just wonderful, wonderful friends, really good guys. And so we came up with an idea this morning, Adam and I said, I'm so impressed by what I witnessed last year that Pam and Patrice taken me back Monday to the spring gathering of the Sandhills in the Platte River in Nebraska, in Kearney, Nebraska, the largest wildlife spectacular on the North American continent. 250,000 birds are present at one time, and they're currently very common. They're depending. Why did they make Kearney their stop? Not that Kearney exists in their heads, but why did they go to Kearney, fellas?
Well, it's kind of on the Central Migratory Flyway, and the Platte River is such that it's so wide and shallow that it's very safe for them to have a stopover site near Kearney on the Platte River, because they can spend their nights on little islands in the middle of the river without getting attacked by predators. So that's that Central Migratory Flyway, we're right on the edge of it in the Front Range, and so a lot of birds migrate through this area. And of course, these sandhill cranes are going up into Canada and the Arctic and Alaska in order to breed and raise families.
Yeah, they're going to Siberia.
Yeah, the other reason they stopped there is the steakhouse you were talking about.
The prawn place. Medium rare.
And that's a great... Yeah. Nebraska is a great place to see them. There's also festivals going on down in Monte Vista, and the Yampa Valley has a crane festival. And these go on through March, pretty much. By mid-April, the end of April, the cranes have pretty much gotten where they're going. But you can see them through March.
Come back full circle. What triggers them? Because now from my reading, and I'm just a reader firing it at the experts, but the cranes that are here now start from the furthest south, and they will perhaps go the furthest north. And they go as far as Siberia.
Well, we think that...
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's all right. We think that most migration takes place due to day length. Many birds have translucent skulls, and the sun shines through their skull onto their brain and onto their pineal gland. And as day length changes, it triggers activity in the pineal gland, which says it's time to go.
Showtime.
Yeah. Also, of course, food availability is a big part of it, too. The reason hummingbirds go south is because there aren't any flowers or insects left. But it's also primarily triggered by day length.
And if you think about how evolution works, or whatever, the power of nature, how long did it take for them to learn to do this?
Nobody knows. Yeah. And if you ask them, they won't tell you.
No.
They're not talking.
Most migration takes place at night. A lot of people think they go in the daytime, but most takes place at night because it's cooler, it's more conducive to flying long distances. But it is chaotic. I mean, there's not a lot of reason to it other than the fact that what they have done in the past worked. So that allowed their species to continue. If we look at the black and white warbler, that bird flies from the western coast of Canada all the way to the east coast of Canada before it turns south to go down. Now, that doesn't make sense. Why don't they just go south? Well, it's because they've always done it that way, and it's been successful.
You know, when you think of that great migration in Africa, where it's the zebras and the wildebeests and they're all moving, and the elephants, and how do they know? I mean, I can get a scientific explanation, but it doesn't sink into me. But I'm thinking now for the millennium, they have done this. They've done this. The agelessness of this.
Yeah, the thing with birds too is that all species don't migrate in the same pattern, the same way.
Yes.
Some birds will start from a certain spot where they spend the winter, and then they'll migrate to an exact spot in order to breed. Other birds, if you move them away from that spot, say you move them horizontally away from their wintering spot, they'll migrate parallel to their old migration route. And, you know, it's just, there's so much more to learn about migration that we don't know yet.
But, again, why do some stay and some go?
Well, some that stay are fine with being able to breed in that area. They figure there's enough food that they can have in that area. And, of course, trying to feed young means that you got to have enough food around. Right. And certain birds, like these sandhill cranes, wherever they winter, there's just not enough food there for being able to protect nestlings and to be able to feed nestlings. So if you ever look at a migration map of the sandhill crane, and you can go to a website called allaboutbirds.org that's run by Cornell Lab of Ornithology, you can see a small place in the U.S., in the southern U.S. and Mexico, where they spend their winters, but then when they go to breed, it goes all across the northern U.S., Canada, and into the Arctic. So they spread out quite a bit in order to raise their families, raise their young that way.
I'm reading.
Yeah, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read a book, Peter. It's a page turner. It's like a novel. It's Living on the Wind by Scott Weidensaw.
I have not.
And he portrays migration. He's just exceptional at painting these verbal images. Just a wonderful book. And yeah, it's Living on the Wind by Scott Weidensaw. A lot of birds that appear to migrate aren't necessarily migrating. For instance, we see robins here in the spring and summer and in the winter, but those winter robins aren't the same robins. Our spring and summer robins have gone south, but we get a group of robins down from Canada and from the north who find this much more favorable climate throughout the winter. So.
One of the terms I came across, and I've been reading about, and I've really amped it up because we're going again, but so every once in a while, a sandhill gets to Europe.
And
you know what, the people like you guys that have your expertise, do you know what they call them, the ones that get to Europe? It's a great word that they use.
No.
They call them vagrants.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that. They call them vagrants.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they show up.
And we'll get vagrants here. We've seen Baikal teals here in Colorado. Every once in a while we get a bird that just gets lost or he gets blown off course by a storm.
Yeah.
Maybe he just doesn't have he might be a few cards short of a full deck, but sometimes they just end up in the wrong place.
The talk show host of Sandhill Cranes.
There are some birds that are not going to be able to pass along their genes.
That's right.
They should not be allowed.
Yes.
So I mean, said and done. We're just kicking this spitballing this idea of taking people. If you haven't seen it, it's Mother Nature's version of the Sistine Chapel. I mean, you're blown by it. It's like, and I know nothing about science. I know nothing about anything, but I was just literally taken back. And then they take off at early in the morning, and guys in wetsuits go down and get in the water. I mean, they're real true craners, and then they wait for them, and they all come. They do it on time, and they do it at sunup, so they're tuned into something, and they just rise, and they go to the fields, and they go to work, and they eat anything that they eat. They eat mammals. They eat snakes. They eat. I was on to what they eat rats. They eat anything they can. Come back to the influence of these guys in Asia. I mean, they're a whole different brood of cranes, but they're impactful historically.
Well, yeah, and if you're interested, if you're interested in learning how to do crane influenced kung fu, I understand Mr. Miyagi is an excellent teacher.
Well, Miyagi was Okinawan style. I know a little bit of. He was an Okinawan, so he would have not been crane style, but his crane style was Chinese. Yeah. Shut up, Peter.
He called it that.
But but he, I met him.
Did you?
Yeah. I think I met the real Mr. Miyagi, but I also met the guy that played Miyagi, and he couldn't do. He had Pat Morita.
What's his name? Pat
Morita. Pat Morita. Yeah. He called himself a name that I won't use on the air, but he had a stunt double. A guy by the name of Demora was his stunt double when they made that film. He couldn't do martial arts to save his life, but he was great, a good man. I mean, just a really good guy. But crane style was Chinese. So what, Peter? So
I think when you talk about the impact that it's had over numerous cultures and millennia, you've got a bird that's been here for 2.5 million years. So it's omnipresent throughout human history. Well, most birds are, but this one is more noticeable, isn't it?
And he plays out. And their early art, there's cranes and the Chinese and the Japanese and the Koreans, and there he is, and the Okinawans, and there he is, and in Central American culture, there he is. In other words, he's a very spiritual. Of course, he's an animal, very spiritual animal.
Well, you can understand why. You can understand why exactly, because of the way that courting cranes they'll stretch their wings, they'll pump their heads, they'll bow and leap in the air, very graceful and energetic type of dance while they're courting. But even you mentioned how they'll all take off at once like that, and often they will jump up before they take off and fly, and they don't have to do that in order to fly. They think that they do that to communicate, hey, now's the time to take off, and everybody goes ahead and takes off.
Yeah, let's go. It's showtime. Let's go. But they do it. I mean, big deal. I'm not an expert. I saw them once. I'm going back to see them again. I'm drawn to them. I mean, they're like, you mean something. I don't know what it is that you mean, but you do have meaning in some old, Anglo-European guy's life. But they look alike. You can't. I not that I could tell males from females, but they pretty much look alike, and they're loud. God, they're loud. And
they have 17 different vocalizations they can make, and of course, when you look at that neck, that's a really long windpipe and a long larynx. So they've got they get heard for a long ways.
One more question, then we're going to break and come back. I want you to talk about woodpeckers because they're back. But are they related to, what are they related? What are cranes related to? I mean, hawks and eagles, I understand, are related. What are cranes related to?
Well, since cranes are so old, they're just not closely related to much other than the whooping crane, really.
Yeah, right.
Because herons and other birds that may look similar really are not that closely related to cranes.
I just got a text that, Peter, you did not see cranes coming out of Africa. You saw storks.
Yeah.
So, that's right. Also, light went on because I saw them flying north out of Africa. I mean,
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't either. No,
they're storks.
And they'll nest on top of the houses. They'll even nest in the chimneys.
And it's good luck.
Europe.
It's good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Peter, you dope. You didn't see cranes. You saw storks. All right. Now, I'm going to put you guys on hold and come back and talk about my most unfavored bird, because they're back, the woodpecker. And my house has been a target for woodpeckers. And other people, I've met people that came up, the show listeners said, I got them GD peckers too. So.
Oh, I love them.
Let me put them on hold. Put these bums on hold. Ladies and gentlemen, with us, they're just remarkably fine men. The Menough. And they had bird talk here on this radio station forever. Scott and Dave Menough, we come right back. Love this. Jackson Timbers. Huh? Big John. The legendary Jimmy Dean. Means you could still recite this. Send Louisiana mount to the promised land, Big John. Saturday morning and good afternoon, I should say. 710 KNUS, spring forward Saturday. 50 will be the high and 65 on Sunday and 70 on Monday. Our guests are the fabulous Menough brothers, and we brought up, first of all, talking about Sandhill cranes. I'm going Monday morning to go see them for the second time, and I'm drawn to them. I just can't explain it, so I won't. And these guys they are really the legends, and they, for years, had retail outlets called Wild Birds Unlimited. They hosted Bird Talk, and we became friends during all of that. And they're kind enough to be with us, and kind enough to, at least at first blush, kick in. We should do a trip of people. I mean, I'd love people to get full value of this. And here's from reading about Sandhills, the Little Dickenses. This is in January of 2019. Birders like you guys found 25 to 30,000 sandhills. The part of it is they say greater and lesser subspecies were wintering in Whitewater Draw State Wildlife Protected Area in southeast Arizona, and no one knew these Little Dickenses were there and doing it. No, seriously. I mean, it's from my reading.
Interesting.
Yeah. That no one knew 25 or 30,000 of them were hiding out Whitewater Draw State Wildlife Refuge in Arizona.
Wow.
Interesting.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You know, if we can't get the buses together, I got a buddy with a 1960 Econoline van. It's got bean bags in the back.
I'll go. I want to go on motorcycles. I want to do it, but you run into that weather.
Yeah.
But you motorcycle, you break out the bikes and put everybody together. And there's a word I said: if you got a guy in the back of your bike, he better have a gas can. But you guys go see the cranes. But Sandhills, man, I love that part. They've been hiding. They've been doing that, and no one knew they were there. So now you say your most favorite bird in the universe is a woodpecker.
Well, maybe not in the universe, but we sure did sell a whole bunch of woodpecker birdhouses and woodpecker food and all that. So they were a significant thing that allowed us to be able to sell our stores and retire when we did. And of course, like a politician caught in a scandal, we had to retire to spend more time with our families.
Right. You know,
if you sell bird food, all birds are good.
There it is.
That's right.
There is Father Flanagan. There's no such thing as a bad boy. You know,
That's
yes,
right.
there is. It's a woodpecker.
We have solutions.
You know, you say these things to me, and we've been best friends forever, and I have just gotten them down to, I call them peckers, because they use their peckers.
Yes, they do.
And then,
who doesn't?
Then again, but they decided that my house is Disneyland for peckers. And
now, did you put up the Flicker house?
I got to put that back up. I have done anything and everything I can, short of, and you're not allowed to shoot them. So
nope.
So now what? I'm going to put the Flicker houses up when I get back. And you
put them up right where he's making that hole.
He's making that hole everywhere. Side of my house looks like Swiss cheese.
Yeah,
You're
they
going to
make
need
the
a
holes.
lot of flicker houses.
Yeah, they make holes everywhere because they'll make a hole and they'll look at the distance between the outside wall and the inside wall, and it's not enough to raise a family. So Ever the optimist, he moves over and he starts making another hole, thinking this one's going to be deep enough for me. This is going to be where I can raise a family, and it doesn't work. So he moves on to another spot.
Damn them.
Now, if you put up the flicker house and you put it up where he's made his most recent hole, it is deep enough for him to raise a family. It's just the right specifications based on what he usually does as far as nesting. And once he takes over that house, then he'll protect your house for an area of up to about 2 acres from other flickers who might want to try to do the same thing. But it's the most effective way to do it. It's not 100% guaranteed, but it works pretty well.
So he really becomes your guard dog.
Yes, he does.
He does. You put him to work for you instead of having to patch all those holes.
He's your guard pecker.
It's a great way to you got to block these peckers somehow. I raised 2 girls, so I knew that I had to do that.
They got some serious peckers. I mean, they got some. You could only hope. They sound like pneumatic drills. And like I'm laying on a couch reading a book. God bless Ireland.
Yep.
And you get up and I open the window and yell and they fly away. But they're only like I know where they got Woody Woodpecker. Remember? Woody would go and laugh at people. That's what they do. They fly up in the tree. They sit up there and they make little noises. And I said, he's jerking me.
That was actually Walter Lance's wife that made that.
She made
Woody
that noise?
Woodpecker sound.
She made the noise.
Yeah, that was his wife.
Can you sing?
And it imitates an acorn woodpecker call.
Can you sing the Woody Woodpecker song?
Now we're going back.
Seriously. There you got it.
That's the Woody Woodpecker
song. He'll peck a few holes in your head to see. No, it's true. I sang the Woody Woodpecker song when I was a little kid because it was popular.
Woodpeckers are going to peck for 3 different reasons. One is to make a hole where they can raise a family. One is to be able to peck holes in order to go after insects.
Yeah.
And the third one is like that machine gun, that rat-a-tat-tat.
Yep.
That's going to be in order to set up a territory and attract a mate. And they usually pick the loudest thing that they can peck on, whether it's a gutter or a chimney cap or something like that. And they do that to try to get a date, to attract a mate.
So they're saying, don't mess with my pecker.
They're saying that, but they're saying, hey, ladies.
In the neighborhood.
That's right. They're trying to attract the ladies.
I got the biggest pecker in town. And you guys.
Bragger.
All right, I'm going to call you when I get back. And I want you to meet me someplace and guide me. You could become and to buying anti-pecker stuff, and because I ain't going through it again this year, and they're already back. They were cracking on the side of the house the other day. And
anybody else that's listening,
will ride the bike.
Yes.
Anybody else that's listening that wants to learn more about bird feeding or how to solve some of these bird feeding challenges and wild bird challenges, they can go to the Wild Birds Unlimited stores. David and I sold our stores to a wonderful family, and Dean and Tina can take care of you. Their family can take care of you at the Denver store, the Arvada store, Highlands Ranch, and Aurora. So they've kind of got the town surrounded. And if you go to WBU.com, WBU for Wild Birds Unlimited, you can find out where the locations are. Actually, today they've got birds of prey on display at all 4 stores till about 4 p.m. So they're going to have hawks and
write that
falcons.
down. Adam, write us a plug.
Yeah.
Write it. It's a plug. I'm calling you when I get back. We're going to meet. We'll have lunch.
Sounds
and
good.
Buy pecker stuff. All right?
Sounds good.
Scott, Dave, thank you, man. I love you guys very much. Thank you so much for your time. Adam, that's it. See you next Saturday.